This is Senior Pastor Jamaal Bernard from the Christian Culture Center, and I want to welcome you to today's message. Wherever you're listening from, at home, in the car, or on the move, I believe this message is going to challenge, inspire, and help you grow. Now let's get into today's message. There are certain issues that people are dealing with. When people are struggling, the struggle is real. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, the struggle is real. And I'm leaning this way because there was a judgment I felt from this area. And I'm not saying it negative, but let me help you understand what was going on. See, because when the struggle is real, there is often times when we tried everything we could possibly do. And now we are searching for something that stands outside of our current conditions, that stands outside of our situation, that stands outside of anything that we could try to find to help. And so what you saw here was a God, divine, intervening on some individuals that done tried everything. And they finally said, okay, I'm going to try God. So that's what you saw here. You saw the move of the Spirit. This is what happens when God moves and shows up sometimes. This is not the only way he does, but this is what happens. And the irony is, my message today is it takes courage to trust God. It takes courage to trust God, and I'm going to try to run through this real quick. And I had a whole introduction, but we're going to just jump. Well, it isn't football season, so. So let's recap real quick. Courage is the theme for this year. And Webster's dictionary defines courage as a mental or moral strength to persevere in the face of danger, fear, and difficulty. But here, our working definition for CCC comes out of Joshua, chapter 1, verses 8 through 9. It says, courage means to bring your mind what you think, your will what you choose, and your emotions what you feel in alignment with your goals, objectives, and values. I'll repeat that. Courage it means to bring your mind what you think, your will, what you choose, and your emotions, what you feel, in alignment with your goals, objectives, and values. And the reason why I'm pushing this, like I said, okay, Lord, what do you want me to minister? And then I heard the song that we came out with, I Will Trust. And I said, man, it actually takes courage to trust. It takes courage just to trust people. Now we add the God factor in it. And some of the things that we go through to even rationalize the existence of this individual, this being called God. And then once we rationalize, say, okay, I'm leaning on the faith saying, yes, God does exist. How or can I trust him? And then we got to ask the question, okay, what does it mean to trust him? What does trusting God look like? But it all starts with the courage, the desire to bring our mind, our will, and our emotions in alignment with the goal to trust God, with the objectives to trust God. And we value the fact of trusting God. So I read in a book, it says, courage is the defining virtue of all of us needed to fully be alive. Without courage, we will never have the character to live out our guiding principles and relentlessly pursue a higher calling. So today, I want to talk about courage. And this also stems from last week I was down in Orlando, Florida. Oh man, we had an amazing time. And it feels so good that the team is developing so nicely that when I walked into the service and I'm watching how the service is going and I come in like a guest, which is fun for me because I like to see what people are doing. And I actually felt like I was at a Christian Culture Center campus. So continue praying for the Orlando campus, continue praying. And we had our Sunday Yahweh, and we were going, through the thing, and I landed at this spot, and I'm going to create tension. I'm going to create tension because when you look at some of the conversations, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, there are some conversations about the way God moves, about the way God does things. So I'm going to create some tension. You ready for some tension? And I said this before, but it bears repeating. See, God does whatever he pleases. And that creates a tension because the number of individuals that has a problem with just that statement alone is something that they're willing to reject God for. See, but if you understand who God is, you can understand and accept the fact that he does whatever he pleases. See, God is the creator of the universe. God is the reason why we exist. God is the reason why the earth exists. So because of that, there's certain things that he is allowed to do. And who are we to try to rationalize and say, oh, well, that's probably some of the problem with Christianity. But yet they don't argue with the government who does whatever they pleases. But that's a different story. Not only that, God does whatever he pleases, and it's always right. See, this is adding more to the tension, right? It's adding more to the tension. And I told somebody, I was ministering last week, and we were talking about, Moses going into Egypt and freeing God's people, and he said, who do I say sent me? He said, I am, that I am sent me, sent you, and Yahweh, and they're going to refer to me as Yahweh, the I am that I am, for generations after generations after generations. This will always be my name. But here it is. You ready for this? This is the tension, because if God does whatever he pleases and it's always right, how do we rationalize the reality that God was sending Moses into Egypt, and God knew that there was some outcomes that a group of individuals would deem not right and fitting for the God to do? Even to the point where he goes and gives them the plagues, and the water goes red, and if you know the Exodus story, please tell me you got to Exodus, second book of the Bible. But here it is. He sends the angel to kill the firstborn son. How do we rationalize that God does whatever he pleases, and whatever he does is always right? How about this? The next part of that statement is God does whatever he pleases, does whatever, and it's always right. How about this? And it's always beautiful, right? I'm creating tension. But there's certain realities that we have to live and understand, that there's certain things that is out of our purview. With our finite mind, it's very difficult to understand the vastness of what God is doing. See, we are just the pieces on the board, so therefore we can't see the whole board. So we are very limited with the information and the knowledge and understanding to start being able to accept at a deep, profound level that God does whatever he pleases. It's always right, and it's always beautiful. And this is where it lies the tension to say, okay, how do I understand how God functions in order to understand the ability to trust him? See, trusting God stems with you understanding and knowing the character of God. Think about this. Doubt comes in whenever you question the nature and the character of the thing you're trusting in, right? But a deepening of faith comes in when there's very little doubt or no doubt of the character and nature of the thing you're questioning. See, so if God is love, life, and light out of his nature, and that God is love, see, love desires to benefit others at the expense of self. You got to understand this God we serve. And I wish I had time to really break down this God we serve, but we have to, go through this. And I don't care what level you are, there's going to be a place where you have a hard time and struggle with trusting God. I look at my daughters and they're 23 and 21, and they go out with their friends and hang out. And I'm looking at them and I'm watching them drive off, and I'm saying, okay, Lord, I got nobody else to trust but you. So you got baby dedication, you got the little ones, they're home, everything's good, they're growing up and stuff like that. Now they want to go out there into this world, and we're watching the news, and I'm like, oh Lord. And then I watched my father go through the process of deepening his courage in order to trust God with this project. He had a vision years ago, 2004, 2005, about this big building in the back of CCC, and wanted to do some things, and God challenged him, said, no, think bigger, and whenever you think bigger, you got to go deeper in trust. Whenever God challenges you to think bigger, you got to go deeper in your faith. See, sometimes we have a difficulty trusting because, one, we don't have enough information, we feel. We don't have enough information. You want me to do what? Right? That's what we ask. Okay, how do I do that? Is that even possible? You're getting just enough information to know that the job can be done, but now all the how and the why and all that stuff, the intricate details about the task is what you're questioning. And God's going to say, no, this is what you're going to do. I called you out of the darkness to be light. This is how you're going to operate. This is what you're going to function. I see you rising above the individuals that surround you. I see you stepping into corporate offices where people said you couldn't do. I see you. And then you start questioning, but Lord, you said you see this, but how? Or how about this? We have difficulties trusting because of fear. Difficulties trusting because of worry, and worry, can stem from a self-esteem issue, a feeling of inadequacies. Worry can stem from so many different things. Difficulties trusting because of our past. Being held into your past is one of the worst things that you can allow to happen in your life because that's one thing you have control over. I'll say that again. Being held in bondage because of your past is a sad thing because that's one of the things you actually have full control over. Because all you got to do is just let go. And this is the irony. So I told this story before, and I was down in Guatemala, and we were taking a youth group of individuals into the jail system, and this is a maximum penitentiary, and we going in, and here it is, they got to search us to make sure we're not bringing contraband or anything in this, and whatnot. And I have these, anywhere from 14 to 18 young individuals, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. I'm praying. Lord, is this the right decision? So we end up going in. Minister Melissa, you remember this one, right? And these guys got AK-47s and the AR-15s. So I'm like, all right, if anything happens, blah, 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 right? We're good. And then all of a sudden I hear the gate close. Kank, kank. And I see the guy with the gun on the outside. And I'm like, you're not coming in? And I said, Lord, have mercy. What have I just done? And I'm telling you, and here it is. I'm wrestling with the ability to trust God. And I'm like, okay, Lord, I need some courage right now because here it is. I see young women and men that I had just brought into this environment. And I'm saying, Lord, I know you sent me, but Lord, man, I didn't know you were going to send me like this. So I'm praying as we were walking in, and people looked at me and they said, man, you look like you were strong and stuff like that. But they didn't know what was going on inside, the wrestling and the stressing out and stuff like that. And he said, go speak to the boss. I go and start talking to the boss. And the Lord just starts moving. And I start talking to him, and I see his tattoos. I say, hey, nice tattoos. I said, I got some tattoos too, right? So break the ice, I was like, orderly Holmes. And I said, the difference between your tattoos, because you're R.I.P., they're all in the ground. I said, but my tattoo, I got a cross. And my cross is, the cross is empty. And I said, I don't have an R.I.P. because the grave is empty. And I said, there's something significant about my Christ. I said, those are your homies. I said, but this is my Savior. And he tells me, he said, no. Your Christ can't save me. I said, why can't my Christ save you? He said, because I'm in jail for 3 life sentences. I said, man, what did you do? All right, we got the translator, and I said, no, emphasize, what did you do? So he's translating stuff like that, and he said, I killed my rival gang member in front of his mother. But before I killed my rival gang member in front of his mother, I SA'd my rival gang. For those, okay, this is like, I know I'll be on social media too much. See, because you get banned if you say certain things on social media. I sexually assaulted my rival gang member's girlfriend in front of him and then killed her. I killed him in front of his mother. No, I killed his mother in front of him, and I finally killed him. I said, first of all, why? And he said, because he was a rival gang member. Nothing else. And he said, and because of that, I know your Christ can't forgive me. And I told him, I said, well, that means you don't know my Christ. You don't know the God I serve. I don't know what you've gone through.
Go ahead.
But the God I serve, the God of the Bible, sent his son because he knew you would have a debt that you couldn't pay. he said, I said, for every life that you've taken, God has paid the price. I said, now don't get me wrong. God's love and justice runs in tandem. They don't operate individually. So the justice, you're going to have to end up suffering the consequence. I said, but there's something about the freedom you receive from letting go of something that God has paid for already. See, now what happens, it trickles into the family. So if he keeps holding on to his past, not letting go, the anger, the revenge, and all the stuff that he's going to go through is now going to be a generational thing that now you're going to see a family of gangsters, And right then and there, he let go of his past and changed the trajectory of the next generation. If you don't let go of your past, you're going to hinder your future. Some of us have a hard time trusting God because we have a distorted image of God. Some of us have a hard time trusting God because we just can't let go of control. I know I'm talking about somebody in this room. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't know your name. If I knew your name, I'll say it. For the sake of time, let me just read you this. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 6, Amplified Bible says, trust in and rely confidently in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight or understanding. In all your ways, know and acknowledge and recognize him, and he will make your path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that blocks your way. So the first thing you need, and we're only going to be able to get to the first one, the first thing you need in order to trust God is what we call courageous faith. And I'm talking about that real deep down courageous faith. The faith that, nobody can tell you anything about your God. See, there's a faith, and I'm not talking about blind faith. I'm talking about an educated, logical, progressive faith that you went through the process to understand who this God is, and you have a deep, profound faith. Let me explain to you. Dr. Bernard has said it this way. He said, faith is an inherent, enduring trust that permeates our understanding and perception of ourselves and the world around us. It is an unwavering trust in the providence of God. Once again, it is an unwavering trust in the providence of God. What happened here today was God moving. It was a providential move of God to change this service, to create an altar call because he wanted to break some chains. He said somebody is not going to leave here the way they came in. Somebody's going to go home out free. Somebody's going to leave in a place where they are no longer bound to sin. And somebody's going to be able to go out there and tell the story. See, Thomas Aquinas' version of Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, it says, faith is a settled disposition. That's courageous faith. I'm settled. I'm settled. Ain't nothing but news can say about God. I'm settled. There's nothing that a person representing God can do to cause me to just walk away from God because I'm settled. There's nothing that some church can do that's going to be outside of what the biblical narrative says is going to do, is going to cause me to walk away from God because I'm settled. He said a settled disposition of the mind that allows the intellect to ascend to things that are not apparent. And I wish we had more time because we're going to go into it. All right, let's finish courageous faith. I'm going to give you courageous faith. Courageous faith is a person by the name of David. And some people have a hard time wrestling with these stories. But let me tell you something. David was a real person that was living at a real time. David is not a fictional character. The Bible is not a fictional book. It's a book that contains history. It's not a historical book, but it contains history. It's not a scientific book, but it contains science. But it's a book that has a story about a real person named David. And David was doing his thing, living his life. You know, he was out there shepherding the sheep for his father. He out there, you know, saying bears and lions and tigers, oh my, he was out there doing his thing. He was good doing what he was doing. Right? Did you get up to David yet? But David walked with a level. See, because one of the things I will say that helps me be courageous with my faith is because I always make sure that I remember what God did in the past. I remember what God has done in the past. I remember what God has done. And that's why I love to hear testimonies, because then sometimes I get energized by somebody else's testimony. I say, okay, he didn't do that in my life, but if he can do it in their life. And so here's David. He's walking, chilling, hanging out, talking to his people. He said, yo, what's going on? Right, this is Jamalism. For the sake of time, I'm Jamalizer, right? It's in the Bible. Read it. And he goes and talks to him. He said, yo, what's going on? Whose man's is this? He said, well, uncircumcised man's is this, that he going to disrespect the God and the people of God. He's like, what's going on? First of all, how can y'all let that happen? See, sometimes we got to be so courageous that we got to check some Christians for letting some things happen. We got to check some Christians because they're not representing right. You know, there's certain Christians that are making us look bad. And I'm going to start checking them. Like, look, get yourself together. Get your life. All right, this is George Jamalism. This is, you know. And so he looks at Saul, he looks at his brothers, and they're like, what are you doing down here? He said, I'm just coming to bring lunch, but now I see what's going on. Now I know the real reason why I've got to pull up. I'm pulling up for God. I'm on business for God, right? And so he's seeing this, and he's having a hard time because when you know the God that you serve, and you see somebody trying to disrespect not only the God you serve, but the people of God who represents the God you serve, you're going to go start walking in a dignified state and say, whoa. But your ability to walk like this comes from this courageous faith that you live by. And he says, who is this guy? He said, let me handle it. Most people would have been concerned, like, nah. They try to give him some armies, and no, I'm good. He said, first of all, it don't fit me. So he goes out there and handles business. For those who know the story, you know, David killed Goliath and cut off his head. It represents a lot more, but for the sake of it, I just want to stay here because the reality is that courageous faith that when we look at David facing Goliath with nothing but a sling and trust in God, God's strength, we too must summon the courage to trust God's promises, knowing that with him, even the highest obstacles can be overcome. Even with God, ain't no obstacle too big, no enemy too strong to stop the move of God in your life. Amen. We're going to stop here. I pray that you got something out of this. Trusting God is one of the key elements that will get you through this life. For some, it's only through trusting God that you'll be able to live this life that God has called you to live. So I want you to go throughout this week and say, okay, Lord, and really be truthfully honest with yourself. Do I really trust you, God? Or is my trust something that stemmed out of a convenience? See, because it's easy to trust God when everything is okay. It's easy to trust God when the number of your bank account is not just zero or negative. It's easy to trust God when you definitely got gas in the car and you're good for the week. It's easy to trust God when you open the refrigerator and it's full because you just went shopping at BJ's because you got too many kids to feed. But the question is, do you trust God when it's not easy? Do you trust God when things are empty? Can you trust God? And we're going to go through the rest of the elements of trusting God. But the first step is saying, let's start developing courageous faith. Courageous faith. Let's all stand.
Thank you for listening to Senior Pastor Jamaal Bernard of Christian Cultural Center. Download the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and visit cccinfo.church for more. We'd love to see you in person. Join us Sundays at 10 a.m. at our Brooklyn or Long Island campuses.